Greetings, artists. Today we're going to be doing a follow along, which is where you are going to follow what I do. I am going to be showing you how to draw some 3D box shapes on this paper, and you are going to be following with the lesson. So whatever I draw, you are going to draw. So first of all, you're going to need some white paper. You're going to need a pencil. If you have an eraser, that's fine. I recommend having an extra one just for big erasings. And if you have a ruler, you might want to use it, but you don't have to. If you want to have a nice straight edge, but you don't have a ruler, one thing you can do is take a scrap piece of paper, fold it, and that will give you a nice edge just like a ruler. If your pencil is kind of still skipping and going over it, you can always fold it in half again. Whenever you fold the piece of paper, it will make a nice straight line. Even if you don't line up the edges, that doesn't matter. As long as this edge is straight, you're good. And this works really well as a ruler. So that's an option if you want a straight line, but don't have a ruler. You don't have to have it. Okay? So first of all, what does a 3D box look like? A 3D box has 6 sides in total. It has a top and bottom, front and back, and 2 sides. When you're looking at one, though, you can never see all 6 sides at the same time. You might be able to see 3 sides, top and 2 sides. You might see just 2, top and a side. Or if you're looking straight at it, 1 side. But if you're trying to draw a 3D shape, you don't want to draw just 1 side because then you just have a square. So what I'm going to do is show you how to draw a box where it looks like this, where you can see the top and 2 sides with the corner pointing towards you. So we're gonna get a little bit closer to my paper here. Zoom it on in. All right, so step 1, you're gonna want to make a vertical line, a line that goes straight up and down. If you want to use a ruler to make it straight, that's fine. It doesn't have to be. The next step is to draw almost like a V shape on the bottom of this line. Now, what you need to be careful of, I'll show you on the scrap paper. So don't do this. This is just scrap. You don't want to draw a sharp V. You don't want it to look too much like an arrow. And you don't want to draw a flat line, okay? Even though we know the bottom of the box is flat, when you're looking at the box, what you're going to see at the bottom is more like a point. So on your paper, you're going to draw a V, but only make it a little bit flat. So kind of in the middle, sort of like that. So it kind of looks like an arrow, but it's like a melted arrow. The next step is to draw 2 more vertical lines from each of these corners. And you want to make these lines about the same as your first line. So here's some ways you can do it. If you have a ruler, easiest first way is just to measure it. Mine goes to about 5/8, so I can go and line that same line up. That's one way. If you don't have a ruler, if you have some scrap paper, what you can do is put your scrap paper right next to your line, make a little mark at the top and bottom. So now you have the distance here, and use that. So then they're all the same height. Now what we're going to do is we're going to connect the top part of the box up here. So right now it almost looks like you have a fork. When you connect this to here and this to here, now it almost looks like a book. Okay, so you have all these different stages. You have the straight line into an arrow, you add the 2 lines to make a fork, and then you add the top line to make a book. Now the last step is probably the hardest of these steps. We're going to be connecting the top of the box to make this top corner right here. What you need to be careful of. So again, this is what not to do. If I'm drawing on scrap paper, you don't have to do this. If you have the whole first part of the box drawn, and I can go quickly because I draw a lot of these, you don't want to do a straight line. If you do a straight line, you get a 3D triangle, which you can use on a different part of this assignment, but we're not doing that right now. You also want to be careful that you don't draw the top of the box too big. You don't want to draw lines that go way up the top. That doesn't work either. So watch out for that. What you want to do is think of it like you're drawing 3 lines that are going in 3 different directions. So like we have 3 vertical lines, 1, 2, 3. Now we want to create diagonal lines. So we got 1 here, 1 here. The last one is going to go over here. So you're going to have 3 lines that are all going in that direction. So again, you can use your extra paper, and a good way to do it is if you slide that straight up, it should give you about the same angle. I usually like to just use my finger. It's what works for me because I like to point in the direction that I'm going. And I will point in this direction. Now this part I'm going to draw very lightly because I know I'm going to have to erase part of it. So when I go to do the second line, I don't want to just connect these. It's going to look a little bit weird. I want to make sure that the line that's going here is going in the same direction as this line and this line. So it's going to be going, let's go this way. It's a little easier on my arm. So going across this way, this one's going to go in that same direction. See how it doesn't match the top? That's okay. It's more important that these go in the same directions. All right, so you've got 1, 2, 3 going straight up and down. You've got 1, 2, and 3 going at a diagonal, and 1, 2, 3 going on a different diagonal. Let me clean that up a little bit. Now for the last step. We've got the drawing done. Now I'm going to show you a trick to make it look even more 3D. We're going to leave the top part alone, and we're going to add what's called shading. Shading is when you have something on your object that's a little bit darker because the light is not pointed at it. So a shadow or a shading might be, if you're looking at, let's see if I can fit it, like on my arm. The top is lighter, but as you get around the edge, it starts to get a little bit darker. This is called shading. To make it look like my arm is rounded, I have it look lighter, and then it gets darker. On a square, we're going to have a very light side because usually light's coming down from on top. So the top of our box is going to be very light. Then we have a side that is a little bit darker and a side that is really dark. This is because there's more light from my window hitting this side. So on our box, we're going to pick a lighter side and a darker side. Now when I go to shade, you're going to notice something. I don't hold my pencil like this when I shade, because when you hold your pencil close, it's harder to make a really light line, to draw lightly. So what I'll do is sneak my pencil down a little bit further, so I'm holding it in the middle or even closer to the end, and I will color in, shade in this side. It might take a little practice to get used to it, but when you hold your pencil this way, it makes it a lot easier to draw lightly. So just fill that in pretty nice. Now the thing about pencil is it leaves all these little lines. And since I want my cube to be a little flatter, look a little smoother, I'm going to use my finger. You can use tissue paper or paper towel, and I'm going to blend it. Just going to rub at the pencil until it's nice and smooth. Then I'm going to go to the other side, and this side's going to be darker. So I won't hold my pencil quite as far back and make this side a little bit darker. You see how when I do it, I fill the middle, and then I do top to bottom. Make sure I get all those corners. And then use my finger to fill in. If you kind of oops and go outside the line, that's okay. That's what erasers are for. And there's our 3D cube. Now the cool thing about learning to do it this way is it lets you draw all different kinds of boxes. It can let you draw really tall, skinny ones or really short and wide ones. So since you need to do at least 2 of these, and you just followed with one, let's do another one. We're going to do a tall, skinny box. So this time our straight line is going to be a little bit longer. And when I go to do the sides, I'm going to make those much shorter. I'm going to use my handy paper because this is a little bit easier for me right now. So we did the arrow. Now we're going to do the fork. There we go. Connect those. Connect those. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Tall and skinny. And we're going to shade it. Always got to go back to shade it. Lightly for the first one. And a little darker for the next one. And I'll do all my blending at the end. Blend that in. Blend that in. You can always tell which students have been to art class in my room because we all have silver fingers by the time we're done with this. So the last one I'm going to show you kind of a tricky one. So this would be a good challenge for you. So if you've got 2, that's all you have to have. I'm going to show you a third one anyway. And you can try to do it if you really want a good challenge. So we're going to do a short line to start. And then we're going to do the bottom part, but we're going to have one side be a little bit longer and the other side be really long. So there's going to be a long side. This could be like if you were going to draw a book that was lying down, because books tend to be pretty long and wide, but they're not so thick. So same thing for here. Let's do our lines again. I'm just going to borrow this one right here. Boop, boop. There's 1, and there's 2. Now for these longer sides, I am going to use my straight edge to help me draw them. There and there. Okay. So now be careful on this next part because it's going to be really tricky to draw these long lines going the same direction. So I'm going to use my straight edge again. I'm going to line it up on this first line and then I'm going to slide it straight up to get that nice long one. Remember drawing a little lightly so I can erase. I'm going to line up that edge, push it straight up. Boom. Yep, see, I went a little far. That's okay. And of course, shading. So once you can draw boxes like this, you can draw all sorts of things and not just boxes. You can draw books and binders. You can draw other storage containers. If you're old at heart like me and you have like a bunch of DVDs at home, you could draw a DVD case, pencil cases. Tables are very similar to drawing, boxes, all of these things you'll be able to draw. And there they are. The only other trick I want to show you is another way of drawing a square, but maybe it's not facing the corner towards you. Maybe it's a little more with the front facing towards you. Some of you might already know this trick and you might already be thinking of yelling at me and saying, but Michonne, there's another way. This is probably a better way if you want it to look more realistic. Another way you can draw a 3D box, this is what I learned how to do when I was in 4th grade, and then I drew boxes all the time, is to draw a square lightly, then draw another square a little bit behind it, and then you connect the corners. And that can give you kind of a cool see-through 3D box. So it is possible to do things this way. If you want it to look like it is not see-through, you can get rid of some of the lines. But what's funny about this, remember I kept counting all these lines? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. It's all the same kind of rules. So as long as you remember, you should have those 3 kind of directions for your lines and 3 sides showing, you'll be just fine. So that's it for drawing squares. If you're having any kind of trouble, if something doesn't look right and you're not sure, take a picture, send it to me on Google Classroom. You don't have to click turn in. You can just send it to me and post in the comments, I need help, and I will come and help you with it. Okay? And then we'll be back later with more cool videos.